Hi, I'm Jim Whaley, CEO of Mission Roll Call, an organization devoted to serving you, the American veteran. In 2023, because of your voices, we made incredible strides. And together, in 2024, we will continue to push for further progress. Our collective efforts are focused on 4 core priorities. The first is veteran suicide. The number of our brothers and sisters taking their own lives remains devastatingly high. Every day, an average of 17 veterans commit suicide. Through your voices, we urged policymakers to increase funding for suicide prevention programs and mental health services. We specifically focused on Fox grants, the Veterans Crisis Line, VCL, and separating the Office of Suicide Prevention from the Office of Mental Health. Another key priority is veteran homelessness, which increased 7% in 2023. Any given night in the U.S., more than 35,000 veterans do not have a place to call home. Together, you can help us continue to advocate for more sensible policy from the Department of Veterans Affairs regarding homelessness and transitional housing for veterans. Too many of these solutions don't ultimately fix the problem. With your help, we can make meaningful change. Then there's the issue of health care and benefits. It's hard to believe, but half of all veterans and their families are not enrolled in the VA. This year, with your help, we will push Congress to make important changes around veteran health care that includes better access in rural areas, improving standards for community care, and supporting other underserved veteran communities. And finally, veterans need support as they enter the workforce. Despite their unparalleled training and work ethic, more than half of all veterans earn less than they did in their active duty roles. This includes the challenge of finding fulfillment, with 80% of veterans leaving their jobs within 2 years. They deserve better. At MRC, we're building a coalition with other veteran groups to improve access to high-paying jobs and reduce turnover in the workforce. Our mission is far from complete. In 2024, we are advocating for more veterans than ever before. I urge you to join us by participating in our polls, engaging with our community on social media, and becoming a member at missionrollcall.org. Together, we will change the narrative and outcomes to improve the lives of every American veteran.
Hey, everybody. Well, welcome to the very first MRC Town Hall. I'm your host, Ray Whitaker. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Mission Roll Call, and we are glad to have you here. Idea of these things is do them monthly, kind of come together. We bring our CEO in and probably other guests from Mission Roll Call to talk to you, talk a little bit about what we're doing and, of course, how we're doing it. Remember to stay informed and to kind of know what we're doing as an organization to support you, because after all, that is what our mission is. Veterans and their families is right above me, kind of up there in the hero image area. You'll see a thing that says join us. Go ahead and click that, join the organization, become a member, and all of that. I want to go ahead and welcome our first and most important guest, which is going to be Mr. Jim Whaley, who is the CEO of the organization. So, Jim, welcome to the first MRC Town Hall.
Well, thanks for having me, Ray. I look forward to it.
Great. All right. We got lots of questions. We got some things to talk about over the last 30 days. We did one of these yesterday, so some of these questions have been answered, but we're going to go a little bit deeper on some of these areas. Okay. The first one I want to talk about, again, is about the testimony in February. Now, we talked about yesterday why MRC's there and kind of our part. What I'm more interested in this time is why is it important for veteran service organizations in general to be in front of congressional leadership talking about veteran and family member issues?
Well, it's a great question. And the reason for it is really simple. And that is we are the voice of veterans, right? Every VSO represents their constituency, that represents the people that are in their area or the people that are in part of their organization. So it's very important for decision makers to hear firsthand what the impacts are on some of the decisions that are being made or not being made at the highest level. There's still a lot of challenges out there, and I think tying a story and the outcomes to legislation is very important for folks in Congress and in Senate and at the VA and Department of Defense to understand what the second and third order effects are of their decisions, or in some cases, not moving fast enough in addressing severe problems. So I think it's very important. We've been very fortunate to go up a number of times and to represent veterans, their families, and caregivers. And we take that as a very solemn, very important task for us. We look forward to it, and we rely on all our members to give us some insights on what's affecting them.
Great. Yeah. And, speaking of VSOs, because that's part of it, right, is creating a coalition, creating organizations, because we know there's over 40,000 veteran service organizations or VSOs that are out supporting veterans and their families every day. But part of it, us at Mission Roll Call, through your leadership and, of course, our wonderful board, is really to focus Mission Roll Call on supporting and elevating these VSOs and our nonprofit coalition. I would love to hear just a little bit about that. And then, of course, if anybody's listening, kind of an understanding that we want them to be part of the coalition because we're all on the same team. So if you could give a little bit of an overview on that, Jim, it'd be great.
Sure. Well, I think all of us can accomplish a lot more in life when we don't worry who gets the credit, right? There's a lot of great veteran support organizations out there that are doing just wonderful work. I mean, a couple of them that come to mind is Team Red, White, and Blue, Team Rubicon, Mission Continues, Vet the Vote, Mighty Hero Homes. I could go on and on and on. Just some great organizations that are making significant impact in the veterans across the nation. And so we think it's important to highlight their work. And the reason I say that is if you think of Mission Roll Call and go to our website, it's really a hub. And it's an opportunity for people that have retired years ago, people that have just gotten out of the military a couple months ago, to really find their path, not only their next job, but who do they want to work with? Because it's very important that veterans link up with another veteran support organization so that they have their tribe when they get out. Some of us did not do that when we originally get out of the military, and there was something missing there. And until we connected, there was something that was missing from our daily life, and that is being part of something bigger than yourself and reconnecting to your tribe, whatever that service was. And so I know for me personally, I didn't do that. I was focused on my job, and in about 6 months, I just kind of hit a wall, and I said, I have to get back to my people. And so that's what I did. I found a veteran support organization, got involved with them. And it made all the difference. So we want to highlight them, and also we want to help them. We have world-class advocacy, and so we want to help other veteran support organizations get in front of Congress, help take their message. And sometimes organizations don't have the assets to do that, and so we want to help that. And I think it's also about telling their story. Our organization is focused around content development, using podcasts, using YouTube, using blogs, every form of communication so that people understand what the challenges are, understand what great organizations are doing, and kind of share that information in a great way. So because most people get their news today via their phone, on the move, at lunch, while they're eating a sandwich, and they're looking at their phone, and that's how they're going to get their news. And so we want to make sure they're up to date with what's going on in the veteran world and help them with their next chapter in their lives. It's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd be remiss not to say, Leon, thank you so much for joining us from New Mexico. And of course, Randy, great to have you both here today. We talked a little bit about Mighty Hero Homes, right? We know this year, one of the priorities, each August, September, we get the opportunity to put a poll out, or really a survey. The rest of the team does that. Veterans, families vote. They tell us, hey, these are the things that we want you as an organization to be focused on. This year, we know that homelessness was one of those things that they wanted us to focus on. We did a partnership with Mighty Hero Homes, and I would love, Jim, for you to kind of talk about homelessness in general, and then kind of that relationship with Mighty Hero Homes as we move through the rest of this year and then, of course, into 2026, because we know this is not going to be an easy issue for us to be focused on.
Yeah, it pains our hearts, right, as a collective organization, not only Mission Roll Call, but the whole veteran community, to hear about any fellow veteran that's homeless. It's an embarrassment to our country. We can't allow it to happen. It has happened, and so now we have to fix it. If it was an easy problem, somebody would have fixed it already. So I think we're going to have to grip hands, put our shoulders together as veteran support organizations, and work together to solve this issue, because someone's not going to do it for us. We have anywhere 35,000 plus veterans homeless every day. Those numbers went up last year. And so we need to solve the problem. And the goal is 0 veterans homeless. And I know that's an audacious goal, but I don't think we as veterans would accept a goal, anything less bold than that. Mighty Hero Homes is tackling this, and they're not the only organizations doing that, but we really feel that the concept they have, the way they're going about it, about actually building homes in a community where all these homes will be, where they can get the VA support that they need, they can have that camaraderie. Just finding a temporary home for a veteran somewhere in a city is only a temporary fix. They're still isolated from their folks. They're isolated from their families. And in many cases, they're isolated from other people in general. And we know that is a slippery slope and a dark path that could possibly lead to hurting yourself or not getting the care you need, or God forbid, something worse. So we want to make sure that we highlight organizations and bring to bear the veterans that we have in our community. Listen, there's 18 million of us, half of which are not associated with the VA or associated with any veteran support organization. All of us as veterans need to support those that are not able, for any number of circumstances, to get their legs underneath them and get on the right path. And I'm reminded of that old saying, right there, by the grace of God goeth I. Any one of us with a series of bad luck could be in that position. And so kindness and empathy, I know we all have that, but now we have to put it to action and make sure that we tackle this problem and get our homeless vets into secure housing where their health will get better. You look at homeless vets, and their medical needs is exponentially higher than those that are in a location where they have all the basic needs. And so everybody understands that they're not getting the health care that they need if they're living on the street. So we need to fix that. None of us are proud of this number. We could spend an hour blaming people, but that's not going to solve the problem. What's going to solve the problem is coming together, highlighting this, becoming a member of Mission Roll Call, taking our polls so that we can drive this home to the VA and to decision makers and lawmakers and get significant support.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Jim. And I think you hit on a couple things that are pretty important. One is all veterans, right, and their families. It's going to take us, right? I mean, we're the ones that served with our brothers and sisters, and there is a part of this that we can help and make sure that we're carrying that message. 18 million is way more powerful than one, right? And that's that is how our government looks at things and they need. So having that voice and pushing through is really important. Getting involved is important at the local level. Jim, and you and I talk about the continuum of care, right? Often people look at the problem, but you're not looking at the symptoms, right? We're not looking at the forefront of this and trying to figure out how this happened. We're just going to, okay, we have a veteran that's homeless. We're not looking at the start of this thing to see kind of where it's beginning and really spending some research and time. And I know we are Mission Roll Call. We're very focused on this right now to figure this out, because the more data you can put these other organizations that we're talking about, we can then provide that data to them and help them be more significant in what they're trying to do. So thank you for kind of clarifying that piece. Jan, thanks for joining us today as well. You mentioned polls and kind of the importance of those. We obviously just had the survey that we put up. We kind of do these a couple times a year, which are, much broader, usually more questions, makes it a little bit easy, right? Less than 5 minutes for somebody to give their time into these. They're very impactful. Can you talk about just how important are these surveys and polls that we're putting out for veterans and their families?
Yeah, it's the oil to the engine that makes the mission roll call. When I go into a senator's office or a congressman's office and I can show them data, I can show them what their constituency believes, what they feel, what they want, that's a game changer. That changes the conversation right from the start. We all know there's significant problems and there's a lot of positive things that are happening. So polls don't only just cover significant problems, they cover about what we think as veterans we want to go into the future and things that we want to have addressed. And this polling information is used by lawmakers, and I've used those polls when I testified in front of Congress, and we use it with the highest level of decision makers. I talked about our polls when we met with the Secretary of Veterans Affairs last week, and he paid attention. He knows the importance of listening to your audience. And we're a unique organization that does this. We're the only one that does it in an apolitical way without any filter. So whatever data we get back from veterans, and I have to say, I know for me and for some people on Mission Roll Call, we've been surprised on some of the data and that's good because it keeps us on our toes. We can't assume to think and know what all veterans and their families want. That's why we have these polls. And then the second part of those polls, besides the Senate and the Congress and the Secretary of VA and others in the elected government or secretary positions, the other use of the polls is with the press, because the media likes to know what the data is, and it helps guide the story. I think all of us are adult to know that some press come to a story with a preconceived notion. Some of those notions are not on target. And when I can show them data, that makes them then rethink about how they're going to write their story or how they're going to cover that. It helps educate them on what veterans, their families, and caregivers need. And you think about it, only 1% of the population has a connection with the military. So we have a lot of room in front of us and a lot of hills to climb to make sure not only the American people understand veterans, but elected officials as well as the media.
Great. Yeah. And like you're saying, I mean, we spend a lot of time polling, right? So for everybody that's listening out there, there's a couple things. If you don't give your voice, you're not going to help change, right? And everybody's voice does matter because we're all in different circumstances. We're all in different states. We all live different lives. Some are single, some are married, some have multiple kids, some are Army, Air Force, and the list just goes on and on and on, right? And I love what you said about the polls and like what we thought they were going to be and then what they actually were when the thing came out. But that's the good part. It's not our voice. It's not Mission Roll Call's voice, right? Our voice is just lumped in with the other veterans and family members, and then we're just providing that. And there's something very, very powerful about that when you deliver it this way, where it's unbiased, right? It's unfiltered, and you're providing this to somebody, and they're looking at it, going, "Wow, okay, this is completely different than what we thought or what we believed was going to be there." For those that are listening, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt. I would say too that it also gives me the opportunity to really engage the media, because I don't have to defend Jim Whaley's position. I don't have to defend Mission Roll Call's thoughts on this. I'm representing all of those that are listening today, all of those that take the poll, and they can do that poll either through the email, through our website, and we have an app that they could do it. So at lunch, they can take a poll and share it with their friends and caregivers and family members. So I think that's important to understand, that it gives us a wide range of opportunities to really engage the media in a thoughtful way.
Okay, great. And I would love the staff that we have. If you guys don't mind, go ahead and posting up or showing that link for folks to get to the polls. That'd be very helpful for us as an organization. So please, look, everybody, you can do anonymous. You can become a member. Like it, we're not trying to okie doke you and get you into the organization, right? To get your voice. We want you to become a member because it's powerful for you. You need to do this because your voice needs to be heard. But we also understand that some folks, man, you got to grow trust with the organization, and we get that, and we're going to build that trust over the next couple of years, as we already have for the last couple of years that we've been doing the work that we've been doing. So thank you, Jim, on that part. The last thing I want to talk about, we talked a little bit about it yesterday. This is so important. I don't think I can get this out enough, honestly. We got 250 years of the military coming up. The celebration is going to be in June. Can you talk about just how important 250 years is for the military, the impact the military's had and all that, and really why folks should take a little bit of time to look at our page that we have to see all of the things that we've done in history, or the military's done in history?
Yeah, well, to me, the history of the military is the history of our nation. And if you think about way back during the Revolutionary War, people grabbed their weapon, went and defended their rights, their freedoms, fought for those. And that's no different than World War I or World War II or folks that are volunteering to serve their country right now. That same ethos, that same strand of DNA that makes you want to be part of something bigger than yourself and to defend your way of life and protect those behind you and to the right and left of you has been part of our nation since its founding. And if you look at the strides that have been made and the sacrifices that have been made for that defense, it's overwhelming when you look at it holistically. And you think about all the wars and all the skirmishes and all the suffering that veterans have had to endure to make sure that our way of life is the way we have it today. It's really humbling. And we're part of that as veterans. We're part of that. And some of us served on active duty, some of us in the reserves or National Guard, some of us were spouses of those that served, and many of us were dependents of those that served. You all had a role in the defense of the country. And I don't think that's something to just say, well, I didn't, I wasn't injured in battle, or I don't know anybody who's lost their life in service. You've served your country and you've supported those that served in your country. It's very important for your voice to be heard. And I think when you look back at all the wars and you really look at the numbers of people that were injured and died, it really is it's sobering. And I think anybody that's visited Arlington, anybody that's gone to a veteran cemetery overseas leaves in a somber mood, but a proud one, knowing that we, as a group of people, past, present, and future, have done an enormous amount of work to make sure this country is the way it is. And so I think it's important to recognize the 250th year and us as veterans to support each other and support organizations that support veterans during this time period, because it's very important to make sure that our next 250 years is as great as our last 250 years.
Yeah. And Jim, you hit on something that I think is important. So for those that are listening, right, we're kind of beating up this idea of taking the polls and stuff for a reason, because it truly is important. Your voice is important. But let me add to something that Jim said that's really important. Yes, it's about you. If you don't feel comfortable about that, though, think about the person to your right or left, and then your family, right? We have folks just like all of us, anybody that's served, right? Whether it's World War II, Korea, and the list goes on with conflicts or non-conflicts, there's always somebody in front of you. The idea is the person in front of you is making the foxhole better for the people behind them. All of us as great human beings, right? I mean, that's why we served. We now have the opportunity to make it better for those behind us. So again, as you're thinking about taking the polls and understanding why we're doing it and all of those things, understand it's very impactful, not just for you, not just for your family. If you need another reason, it's to also impact veterans that are coming behind all of us. So thank you, Jim, for that. That was very good explanation. Okay, so everybody that's here today, towards the end of these, every single time, we're going to ask questions. We get an opportunity to put Jim on the hot seat, right? And let you ask questions because it's important, right? One, we may get some data or some things that we didn't think about, right? Like things that we just didn't know that are issues that we can then focus in on, make polls and surveys. But then two, we can update you, let you kind of know what's happening in a particular area or the way things may or may not be. So if you have questions, ask them in chat. Okay. If we don't get to it today for some reason, we'll figure out a way to make sure that we get these answers out to you guys through social or whatever the other case may be. But I suspect that we'll probably get to those today. All right, so let's get the first question up for today. I believe it's going to be Ronald Yates. I apologize if I got your name incorrect. Okay, Jim. So the first question is, how many homeless vets do we currently have?
Yeah, well, sadly, I don't think we actually know that number. I've worked with a couple of VSOs on this, and the way we count homelessness is not very accurate. We have different systems in different states, different municipalities, but the number that is usually used is around 35,000. I think that number is, the actual number is higher than that. Because I think there's a lot of people that go in and out of homelessness. So in other words, they're homeless for a little bit, they find a temporary housing, or they're staying with some family member or with a friend, and then they slip back into homelessness, or they find a job and then it doesn't work out and then they're back to homelessness again. So that number is not a static one. And I don't think it's accurate. So as with any major problem, first you have to identify the scope of the problem. And so that's one of the things I think we as a nation need to take on.
Yeah. And I think the interesting part with that also, Jim, is like the individual also has to identify, as a veteran, that means they had to have gone through the VA system. I mean, and that's not something that would normally happen, right? Like normally circumstances you talked about earlier, individual then ends up living on the street or being homeless. That doesn't mean that they are now self-identifying with somebody, because in many cases, they're already shut themselves off from folks. So that's another reason why.
And if you're overwhelmed with a lot of problems, or the world has given you a lot of problems and you're homeless, coming to mind to say, oh, I need to register because I'm homeless is not one of those tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, hopefully, Ronald, that answers your question. We are doing a lot of research on this right now. This is an interesting thing. We went into this and really started to deep dive on this, and wow, there's a lot of research that's got to be done. And that's part of what, veterans and families ask us to do, is to take on our priorities and really learn those priorities. And then of course, educate and inform congressional leaders, city, state leaders, and of course news, as Jim was talking about. So looking forward to that. Okay. All right. We're ready for the next question. Looks like this is going to be from Randy Reed, Jim. This one says, hey guys, I'm the spouse of a veteran, and I've seen firsthand how tough the transition can be, not just for them, but for the whole family. What role do you think families play in mission roll call's mission? And Jim, I'd love for you to talk, because us as an organization, when we look at those priorities, we laid those out for veterans, right? Because they voted. That doesn't mean though that we're not focused on creating a hub and then also informing and educating through some of our programmatics. So I'd love for you to kind of deep dive those to help Randy kind of understand.
Yeah. So I'll just go to a personal level, right? So I was in the Army for 20 years. So that meant that my wife was in the Army for 20 years. Even though she was active duty for a little bit and got out, she was in the Army for 20 years, just didn't get paid for it, right? And my children were in the Army, moving from place to place and adapting to where we were living and what the job was and new friends and all those sort of things. So I think the entire family plays a key role in mission roll call, and their voices need to be heard. I think about the number of dependents that have had their life in flux. They see their parents maybe going through the challenges of transitions, and they feel a little powerless. So that's why I think it's important we hear everybody's voice on this important subject, on all of our subjects that we poll about, because we use those numbers to do what we've talked about earlier. I feel that those stories are sometimes not told as well as they could and should be. I also think we have a lot of work to do when it comes to Reserve and National Guard. Their up tempo, their workload now has gone up because of many reasons. And they have a almost bigger challenge because they live in a community. They work for an organization that may not really understand why that person needs to be gone for a number of months. And they don't have a whole base or post taking care of them. The family's kind of isolated and they have to figure it out on their own. So there's a lot of work to be done on us getting support for that and getting acknowledgement for that. And I think the first step is education. And the way we do that is through our polling and testifying in front of Congress and writing articles and doing blogs. And I would invite people to go to our podcast. We've had a number of great podcasts on homelessness and on some challenges that family members have endured, especially with folks that have been injured in combat or injured on active duty. And then the spouse and the dependents have to adapt to that. So absolutely, it's very important that we think holistically of the entire family and the caregivers in this situation.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I know that we've talked a lot about that, creating that hub and trying to help that educational process, as it happens, because transition, I think we all think this before it happens. Transition is that very small time period when you get your retirement paperwork or that you're ETS and are being discharged. The reality, though, for us is that really transition never ends in life. Like, it's always going to happen. So we're consistently thinking about that with the items that we look at, the programmatics that we look at, and how we interact and connect with people. So thanks for that, Jim. That was great. Okay, I think we have one more question. Okay, so this one, Jim, is from Helen DeWitt. Thank you so much, Helen. Hey, Jim, I'm a veteran living in a pretty rural area, and sometimes it feels like we're kind of out of sight and out of mind. Mm-hmm. What's Mission Roll Call doing to make sure voices like mine don't get lost in the shuffle? So, Jim, I want to talk a little bit about, to lead you into this one.
Okay.
I know when we came in last year, we were talking about this idea of having rural veterans and having those that were kind of not represented, right? I know for you and I, we both feel the same. A veteran's a veteran, a family's a family, right? So no matter where that veteran lives, where that family is, we are focused on that. So I would love you to talk through that, just how important it is and why Mission Roll Call, really focuses in on those no matter where they are. Doesn't matter if they're, in Wyoming in the middle of nowhere, or if they're near a large city in New York, or if they're an expat living in another country.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the power of our investment that we've made in a state-of-the-art website that is actually a hub that allows veterans, families, anyone really to go to that website and find the information that they need, either what the transition process, let's face it, transitions for all of us is our own challenge, right? To some degree, all of us had challenges with our transition, some more than others. But none of us have been happy with the transition process that has been afforded to us by our services, right? So it's a challenge. And so we're trying through our hub to address that. We have a YouTube video about transitions. We have a YouTube videos about accessing the VA and podcasts addressing this issue. So I think all of those are there to help veterans try to figure out how to do that. And of course, if you're rural, you have to kind of rely on that type of a tool. And that's why we built it. I think the other thing from an advocacy standpoint is, I testified last month, and one of the topics we talked about was the Veterans Access Act, which specifically addresses the issue of having reasonable driving distances to getting the care that veterans and their families need, and having a reasonable time frame of which you have to wait to get the care that you need. And so we, as building the coalition, went and talked about that. And so it's part of the testimony. But we also went to a number of senators and congressmen's office and talked specifically about that. So hopefully that act makes its way into law, and it continues to help improve that. We all know that in parts of our country, if you did an overlay of where a VA facility is and where the population of veterans are, there's room for improvement. So that's another thing that we're trying to highlight and work with the VA with to make sure they're aware of that. So, but I come right back to it. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. So our voices need to be heard. And when we have a meeting where I'm walking into the office representing millions of veterans, that's a different conversation than when I walk into a local congressman's office and just represent a few hundred people. We get their attention when we talk about millions. And that's why it's so important that we share this information with those that care about veterans and their families and our own individual tribes, and say, hey, you need to take this poll, you need to get involved, check it, get on their list, get involved. It's not a heavy lift. And let's face it, if all of us had the same work ethic and the same priorities that we did when we were on active duty, this would be a no-brainer. None of us would walk past some soldier or airman or Marine who needed help and not render it. We would stop what we were doing and fix that problem. We would get them the help they need. We need to do the same moving forward. And remember that's still part of our duty.
Absolutely. Well, good. Well, Jim, thank you so much for your time today. I think it's, the entire team feels that it's important that we have an opportunity to let you talk to the group here. And of course, we've got phenomenal staff that will get the opportunity to be on here as well, to answer questions, to just make sure that what we're trying to do, folks understand we're doing it for them, right? Like that's a very clear kind of focus. So I'd like to ask anything else that you want to say before we say the goodbyes for the day.
Well, I would just say, get involved, have your voice heard. It's important that you do this for the future of all the services, and validate the great work that you've done as you served your country. I know we all could say, well, we did our part and we've moved on. But the fact is we still have a hill to climb together. And we've talked about some of those challenges with transitions, with access to healthcare, with suicide numbers and homelessness. All those things as a group we can fix. We don't need somebody to tell us to do that. We know to do that. And so it's just a matter of us spending a little bit of time, a little bit of focus, jotting down on our calendars a half an hour a week, 10 minutes to take a poll, to get involved, to sign up, and to share the information with others. And with that, we will make a significant impact.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jim. We appreciate your time. As always, for those listening, for the veterans out there, looking at you, thank you for your service. For the families, thank you for allowing us to use your veteran for their service, right? For being patriotic and allowing that. And some of you got a choice and some of you didn't. I completely understand. Either way, we thank you for that. As Jim talked about, be an impact for others. That's what we're asking you to do. missionrollcall.org. Visit it. There's a lot of great content. We have fabulous writers and podcasts and YouTube videos and all of these things. But most importantly, we're here for you. So if there's something that you see or something you think that you need, use the contact us form, reach out to us, info@missionrollcall.org. Trust me, email's open. We're answering them every single day. Right. And we'd like to. So as always, we hope you guys have a wonderful week and we will see you on the next one.
Thank you.